Tried watching an episode of Ancient Aliens today. I've managed to sit through about half of the episode. Problem with Ancient Aliens is, it does my head in, it does. Any of you ever tried watching Ancient Aliens? Basically, the idea is they interview people like Eric von Daniken and Giorgio Carlos, who are supposed to be supposed experts on Ancient Aliens. The only problem is, they go on and on about all these amazing things like the ancient Egyptians had a helicopter. No, they didn't. But that's one of the things they go on about. You know, supposedly proof that ancient aliens helped the Egyptians. People like that. I'm going to have to pull the visor down for a moment. But basically the idea is supposed to be that ancient aliens existed. Not aliens as in like, oh no, I'm an ancient alien, help me, I need to go and visit the Earth. Not like that, obviously. The idea is supposed to be that aliens existed in ancient times and helped the Earth. And the evidence they come up to prove this is just, frankly, non-existent. To give you an example, there's, I'm trying to think, I can't remember where it is off the top of my head. Obviously it's in Egypt. But there's a temple and it's got some glyphs on it and they look a bit, one of them looks remarkably like an Apache gunship. Helicopter. Now, it does look like it. You know, if I remember while I'm talking about this, I'll stick an image up of it, up of it, and you'll see. It really does. We're gonna have to slow down for a minute. It really does look like a helicopter, I'll be honest, and there's an image next to it that looks a bit like a submarine or a boat. Now, you'll probably see that if I remember to upload an image of it and stick it over the top of this while I'm talking. To be honest, I'm not sure if I will remember or not, but, you know, hopefully I will. Anyway, I digress. It really does look like a helicopter, I'll be honest. But the problem is that, and it's very easy for you to find this out yourself, you don't have to be Egyptologists, I'm not an Egyptologist. There are certain images, certain glyphs, and what they did in ancient Egypt was, at some point, they would take the original glyphs and they would basically, it was kind of like writing over it. So that they'd put new glyphs over the top of it and, you know, new pharaohs would have new stuff written over the top, and it's a standard practice, that's what they did. Well, what's happened in this case, and it's very easily explained, you can Google it for an answer if you really don't want to take my word for it. Don't take my word for it, in fact, Google it, it'd be better to see it with your own eyes. But basically what happened was a couple of glyphs, and they know exactly what glyphs they are, have been superimposed. A bit of one has fallen off, revealing what was underneath more clearly, and it's basically two glyphs that when they join together, you know, they look like a helicopter. Now, it wasn't a helicopter. They know exactly what glyphs they are and they know how it happened, and it's not that uncommon. It's just uncommon that it happens to have formed in the shape of a helicopter. It does look remarkably like a helicopter, I'm not going to lie. But no, ancient Egyptians did not have a helicopter. And if you believe in the Bible, which I don't, if you believe in the Bible, think about it. If Ramesses, you know, if Pharaoh had had a helicopter and his firstborn had just been killed off by the god of the Hebrews, don't you think he would have gone, alright, I'm going to get the helicopter out and kick their Israeli asses? You know, no. And they talk about the Hopi Indians, I'm sure it was the Hopi, and they say that the Hopi Indians were ordered by their god to go around and set up camp, you know, make villages, towns, whatever you want to call them, settlements, like, we'll say settlements because I can't remember whether they call them towns or not. We call them towns in Britain, but they made settlements, and if you take all these settlements that they made over hundreds of years, they all shape up to look exactly like the star constellation of Orion, you know, the stars of Orion, and that must prove that aliens visited them and that their god was an alien, and their god told them to map it out as a sign that they came from Orion. Okay, except no, they don't. Okay, the problem is, and you can Google this, it's very easy to find out. If you take all of the Hopi Indian settlements, not just select a few like the ancient alien people do, if you take all of them as they're claiming, all of the settlements, if you actually do take all of the settlements and you turn around and you stick them on some paper, on a map, you map them all out, you'll see there are lots and lots of them, and they don't look anything like the star constellation Orion at all. They don't look like any particular shape at all. That's the truth. They do not look like a shape of anything. It's as simple as that. There's a lot of motorbikes out today, isn't there? But anyway, yeah, I digress. They don't look like anything. That's the problem. What the ancient alien people do is they pick out key ones and they go, boom, that's it, we'll pick them out and ignore the rest, and then that'll look like the star constellation of Orion. And that must prove that their god was an alien. No, it doesn't. Excuse me while I cough. It doesn't prove their god was an alien at all. Because you basically, if you actually do what they say they're doing, which is take all the settlements and map them out, and then they say all these settlements map out as a constellation, they map out as an exact copy of Orion. No, they don't. Actually, they don't map out as anything. There's a lot more that, there's a lot more settlements, for example, than there are visible stars of Orion's belt. They're in different positions. They just do not map out. It's absolute rubbish. And again, they do the same sort of thing, misleading people with the Easter Island statues. They turn around and they go, "We do not know how the statues of Easter Island were carved. How were they moved with no trees?" Etc., etc. Could aliens have done it? Here's a couple of facts about Easter Island. Number one, there's actually one of the statues of Easter Island is in the, I think it's the British Museum. It's in a museum in Britain anyway. I think it's the British Museum. And we know exactly how they were carved. We've actually found some of them in the state of being carved, and some of them dragged halfway down a hill, etc., where they were in the process of being dragged down. There was an accident, dragging them down, and what happened basically was that they, couldn't do it. They had a problem and they couldn't drag it anymore. It was damaged, etc. We also know that, so we know how they made them, how they carved them, etc. We also know that there used to be trees. There were lots of trees on Easter Island. Don't take my word for it. We've got scientific evidence. They've done digs, etc. But also, taken samples, etc. But also, they've done other things as well. They've got records, for example, from ancient times. I say ancient times, not ancient to us necessarily, like 1800s, for example, but ancient to ancient alien theorists anyway. So yeah, we know that they did not get built by aliens, they weren't visited by aliens, anything like that. Unfortunately, Ancient Aliens just takes this idea of H.P. Lovecraft, who wrote it in a story a long, long time ago, well, a few stories, this idea that aliens helped mankind, and it was just for a story, just a clever idea, really. But they've taken this idea and they run with it. They wow, it must be true. The trouble is, none of the evidence, if you actually examine the evidence as they present it, it is complete rubbish. They deliberately misrepresent things. Ancient aliens did not come down, help mankind, genetically engineer us, etc., etc. And really, they like to claim that they did. They didn't, but they like to claim they did. There's no evidence that people were helped by aliens. There is literally no evidence. Not one single shred of hard evidence anywhere ever has even remotely suggested it. And all ancient aliens can come up with is misrepresented supposed facts. And outright lies, like saying that we don't know how the pyramids were built. Well, no, technically we don't know how they were built. Oh, that must be aliens. No, we've got a very good idea of how they were built. We found evidence of how they were built. We've also found a 4,000-year-old diary from one of the people that helped to build the pyramid. So we know, for example, that it was people that built the pyramids, and it was, that was a dodgy change, sorry about that. We know that it was people that built the pyramids and not aliens. And we know there were no aliens around. We know that. It would have been mentioned by people if aliens were around helping, Think about it, it would have been mentioned. We know they didn't have helicopters, because otherwise why would they be going around in chariots? They didn't have a helicopter. And if you're going to argue, well, maybe they didn't have a helicopter, but the ancient Egyptians might have seen a helicopter, well, alright, let's assume that's true. If they'd seen a helicopter, why would there be one glyph that looks just like two glyphs mixed together, which is what they think happened, one fell off a bit and the other one showed, and they know what glyphs they were? Why would they not have mentioned it any other place in any other record, such a momentous discovery as discovering or seeing a helicopter from the future or from an alien? Why would it be one tiny little glyph on a temple? Why? It would be mentioned. It would be like, wow, we found ancient beings. You know, we found ancient aliens. We've seen aliens. We've seen extra. And especially if you're trying to argue, like Ancient Aliens does, that these people were the gods of ancient Egypt, and that, you know, they worshipped them, etc. Well, if they did, there would be a lot more evidence if they saw helicopters, etc., than one single glyph, which, you know, oh my goodness, I thought that was a cat. I thought that was my friend's cat. Then I think sitting there thinking, what the heck's that cat doing down there? Yeah, but it's not. It looks very similar though, same colour and everything. Anyway, yeah, basically, it really does look similar. Hopefully. But there's just no evidence. There is no evidence at all. It's as simple as that. No evidence whatsoever. And it bugs me that Ancient Aliens, the programme, twists the ideas and outright lies. You know, it's not a documentary. It misrepresents itself. It is not a documentary. It's as simple as that. It is not a documentary. But anyway, it's very annoying when people claim that it is. And then they bring people on like, Giorgio Sakalos is an expert on this, is an expert on that. Experts claim this. No, they don't claim that. No. Oh, there's one of those ruts again. But no, Giorgio Sakalos is not an expert. He's a former bodybuilding promoter, muscle promoter, you know. That's what he is. He's no more an expert on anything than I am on Ancient Aliens. He's got as much expertise on Ancient Aliens as you have. Unless, of course, you happen to be an expert on Ancient Aliens, in which case, he's got less expertise than you. Ancient Aliens basically takes this idea and they run with it. This idea that, lo and behold, Ancient Aliens were around, you know. There were ancient aliens, and you know, there were aliens in ancient times, and they helped us. No, they didn't. They didn't even exist. And yeah, I do believe in aliens. I think aliens probably do exist. I don't think they've been visiting Earth. And oh, the worst one earlier on, I turned it off when I started going on about this after a while because it just did my nutting. But the hollow Earth theory. I'm not even going to begin to go into what's wrong with that right now. But let's just say we know from scientific observations the Earth can't be hollow. But never mind. So yes, returning to the subject, Ancient Aliens bad, logic good.